7 movies released in February 1988 lost a combined fortune, yet their casts included Julia Roberts, Harrison Ford, Pierce Brosnan, River Phoenix, and Matthew Perry before any of them became stars. That's not Hollywood revisionist history. That's February 1988, the month that proved even future legends can't save a dump month release. But the box office numbers are only the beginning. What actually happened behind the scenes and why studios buried these films in the deadest month of the year is where things get interesting. To understand why these films never stood a chance, you need to know what they were up against. Good morning. Vietnam was dominating theaters. Robin Williams was pulling in $40 million that month alone. Behind it sat a wall of late 1987 holdovers still printing money: 3 Men and a Baby, Fatal Attraction, Moonstruck, Wall Street. Every Best Picture nominee was still playing when Oscar nominations dropped. Studios knew exactly what February was: a graveyard, a place to burn off films they'd already given up on. The in-crowd grossed $136,000 total, not opening weekend, total. Orion Pictures released this 1965 Philadelphia set dance movie into exactly 37 theaters, all concentrated in the Philadelphia area, and then seemingly forgot it existed. Donovan Leitch Jr., son of the 1960s folk legend Donovan, plays a straight-A student who sneaks onto the set of a local TV dance show and accidentally becomes a sensation when the lead male dancer misses a taping. Joe Pantoliano, years before The Matrix and The Sopranos, plays the show's host. And here's a detail I genuinely didn't expect. Ricki Lake appears in a small role, a full year before John Waters would cast her as the lead in Hairspray. Director Mark Rosenthal shot the film in summer 1986 at Temple University. A dinner sequence was filmed at Kona Kai, an iconic Philadelphia tiki restaurant that closed permanently later that year, making this possibly the only film to capture its interior. But none of that mattered because Orion gave the film zero support. One blogger later wrote the far worse films have done well, so the fault lies not with the movie, but with Orion Pictures. The timing didn't help either. Dirty Dancing had made $63 million the year before riding 1960s nostalgia. The in-crowd arrived just as that wave was cresting. The real twist is what happened after. Music rights issues have prevented any official DVD or Blu-ray release. The film remains effectively trapped on VHS and free streaming platforms. An Internet Archive upload has attracted fewer than 3,000 views total. It's not a lost film. It's a forgotten one. Aloha Summer was filmed in 1984 and not released until February 1988. 4 years on the shelf. That alone tells you everything about what the studio thought of its chances. Set in 1959 Hawaii, just before statehood, the film follows mainland teenager Mike Tognetti through a transformative summer of surfing, fighting, and falling in love. Director Tommy Lee Wallace had previously made Halloween 3 and would later direct the TV adaptation of Stephen King's It. Financial disputes, reportedly including unpaid crew and cast, caused the delay. By the time tiny independent distributor International Spectrafilm finally released it, any commercial momentum was long gone. It opened in 123 theaters and grossed $418,000. But here's what nobody expected. The cast's most notable member didn't know it yet. Tia Carrere made her film debut here after being discovered at a Honolulu grocery store at age 17. 4 years later, she'd break through in Wayne's World. Later, she'd voice Nani in Lilo and Stitch. Chris Makepeace, who had been a teen star from Meatballs and My Bodyguard, was already in decline. This was one of his final prominent roles. Yuji Okamoto, who played Chosen in The Karate Kid Part 2, appears as one of the Japanese teenagers. He'd later reprise his Karate Kid villain in Cobra Kai decades later. Critics weren't kind. The New York Times called it empty nostalgia done for its own sake. The most honest assessment came from Newhouse News Service, which noted that Aloha Summer remains at heart a sappy beach movie that misses out on only one cliché of the genre. Nobody gleefully announces Surf's Up. The film never received an official DVD release. It remains VHS only. Taffin earned $159,000 domestically, which sounds like a catastrophe until you realize it accidentally created one of the most durable internet memes of the past 20 years. Pierce Brosnan plays Mark Taffin, a tough debt collector in a small Irish town who uses martial arts and intimidation to help locals fight a corrupt business syndicate trying to build a chemical plant on the town's sports field. Shot in County Wicklow and Dublin beginning in August 1987, the film is essentially an Irish roadhouse. Time Out called it confused and unexciting. The Action Elite was more charitable, calling it a fun little action movie with Pierce Brosnan for the most part being a badass. But the career context is what makes this interesting. Brosnan had been chosen to replace Roger Moore as James Bond for The Living Daylights. Then NBC activated a last-minute clause to renew Remington Steele for a 5th season, yanking Bond away from him. NBC then produced only 6 episodes before canceling. Brosnan was left without Bond or Steele, scrambling for film work. Taffin began filming approximately 6 months after The Living Daylights wrapped with Timothy Dalton. Brosnan would not become Bond for another 7 years. 2 future Father Ted stars appear. Dermot Morgan and Frank Kelly both have roles years before Father Ted premiered. The score was co-composed by a then-unknown Hans Zimmer alongside Stanley Myers. This was the same year Zimmer scored Rain Man. But here's what actually matters. During an argument with his girlfriend, Brosnan delivers the line, "Then maybe you shouldn't be living here with such volcanic intensity," that it became a viral internet meme. The clip spawned YouTube remixes, Redbubble merchandise, and an entry on Know Your Meme. On Letterboxd, reviews consist almost entirely of increasingly elongated versions of Here. The meme outlived the movie, at least there's that. Satisfaction grossed $8,253,000. Which sounds respectable until you learn it was supposed to launch a TV star's film career. It didn't. But it did accidentally capture Julia Roberts' first credited big screen appearance. Justine Bateman leads an all-girl garage band called The Mystery that lands a summer gig at a beachside bar run by Martin Falcon, played by Liam Neeson. The film was shot over approximately 35 days in Charleston, South Carolina, beginning in May 1987. Bateman was 21 and at peak fame from NBC's Family Ties, where she played Mallory Keaton. The film was essentially a vehicle for her. She took singing and guitar lessons, and the cast rehearsed for 6 weeks. Bateman candidly admitted her limitations. "Luckily, we're just supposed to be a garage band because my voice is very far from Sarah Vaughan's." But the real story isn't Bateman. Julia Roberts was 20 years old and virtually unknown. Satisfaction was her first credited big screen appearance. An Amazon reviewer later observed that Roberts doesn't pop out as a future star. Watching Satisfaction, you could imagine that anyone in this strong ensemble, even Justine Bateman, could go on to great things. Immediately after wrapping, Roberts was cast in Mystic Pizza. Steel Magnolias in 1989 brought an Oscar nomination. Pretty Woman in 1990 made her the highest-paid actress in Hollywood. Roberts and Liam Neeson reportedly began dating during or shortly after filming. Neeson was still building his Hollywood career after roles in Excalibur, The Bounty, and The Mission. Leading man status wouldn't arrive until Darkman and Schindler's List. Critics were unkind. The New York Times called it a typical low-budget summer movie where everyone has a hot romance, a good body, and an expensive haircut. Leonard Maltin was blunter, writing that citing a lack of romantic chemistry between Neeson and Bateman would be much too polite. "What gets me every time is how quickly history reshuffled the deck. Within 2 years, the 5th-billed actress nobody noticed would be more famous than everyone else in the cast combined. A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon grossed $6,264,000 on a $4 million budget. That sounds like a modest success. It wasn't. Because what ended up on screen wasn't the film anyone made. River Phoenix plays 17-year-old Jimmy Reardon over one eventful night in 1962 suburban Chicago as he navigates class anxiety, romantic entanglements, and the looming threat of being sent to business school. Director William Richert adapted his own semi-autobiographical novel, filming in Evanston, Illinois. Island Pictures originally planned a modest release for August 1987. Then they sold domestic rights to 20th Century Fox, and Fox destroyed it. This is one of the most documented cases of studio interference in 1980s cinema. Fox's president found the film too depressing and wanted a teen comedy to exploit Phoenix's teeny bopper fanbase. They changed the title, they threw out Elmer Bernstein's original score and replaced it with Bill Conti's score plus hot oldies. They removed Richard's adult narration because it sounds like a grandfather. They cut a crucial 6-minute scene to squeeze in more daily screenings. They removed a song River Phoenix wrote. They did not screen the film for critics. Richert documented all of this in a 17-page letter to the Chicago Film Critics Association. The cruelest irony is that Fox marketed the R-rated film exclusively to teenagers who couldn't buy tickets without adult supervision. Richert recalled watching little kid after little kid walk out in bewilderment. The cast is staggering in retrospect. Phoenix was 16 during filming, fresh off Stand By Me. Matthew Perry made his film debut at approximately 17. Johnny Galecki, later Leonard on The Big Bang Theory, plays Jimmy's younger brother. Ione Skye appears 1 year before her iconic role in Say Anything. Phoenix was reportedly embarrassed by how the film was marketed. A director's cut exists. Richert eventually recovered footage, restored Bernstein's score and the original narration, and released the film under its original novel title on Vimeo. Nathan Rabin of the AV Club declared it a secret success. His verdict: Richert was right. I don't know if that's fair to Fox, but I suspect it is. She's Having a Baby earned $16 million on a $20 million budget. For any other filmmaker, that's disappointing. For John Hughes, coming off 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, it was a turning point. This was his only sustained attempt at a mature adult drama. It marked the end of his ambitious period. Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth McGovern play Jake and Christy Briggs, high school sweethearts who marry young and navigate the anxieties of suburban adulthood. Mortgages, careers, infertility, the creeping fear that life's adventure is over before it started. Hughes wrote, directed, and produced, filming in Winnetka and Evanston, Illinois. The film was completed in late 1986, but held until February 1988 because Hughes was simultaneously finishing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This was Hughes's most autobiographical work. He met his wife Nancy in high school, married young, and worked as a copywriter at an advertising agency, exactly mirroring Jake's story. But his core audience was teenagers, and critics found the tonal shifts between comedy, fantasy sequences, and genuine marital drama jarring. Roger Ebert gave 2 out of 4 stars, writing it begins with the simplest and most moving of stories and interrupts it with an amazing assortment of gimmicks. The famous ending sequence features dozens of celebrities suggesting baby names: Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Matthew Broderick, Bill Murray, Magic Johnson, Michael Keaton. Characters from other Hughes films appear. Ferris Bueller shows up. But here's the real story. The soundtrack is the film's greatest legacy. Hughes commissioned Kate Bush to write a song for the climactic birth scene. Bush composed this woman's work from a man's perspective after Hughes described his own experience during his wife Nancy's difficult labor. The song transcended the film entirely. It appeared on Bush's 1989 album The Sensual World, was covered memorably by Maxwell, appeared in The Handmaid's Tale and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and became a TikTok trend in the 2020s. After this film's failure, Hughes pivoted permanently toward broader family comedies. Uncle Buck, Home Alone. Some critics argue the end of his ambitious career began here, which is insane when you think about it. Frantic grossed $17,637,000 domestically on a $20 million budget, a failure. Except critics gave it 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, and modern retrospectives call it one of Harrison Ford's finest performances. So, what went wrong? Harrison Ford plays Dr. Richard Walker, an American surgeon attending a medical conference in Paris whose wife vanishes from their hotel room. As he navigates French bureaucracy and an increasingly dangerous underworld conspiracy, Walker is drawn into an alliance with Michelle, played by Emmanuelle Seigner. Directed by Roman Polanski with a screenplay by Polanski and Gerard Braque, with an uncredited polish by Robert Towne of Chinatown fame, the film features an Ennio Morricone score and was shot entirely in Paris. The project came together almost by accident. Polanski was desperate for a hit after Pirates bombed spectacularly. He'd been developing a Tintin adaptation with Melissa Matheson, who happened to be Ford's wife. Ford flew to Paris to visit Matheson, and Warner Brothers asked Polanski if he had a project. Polanski and Braque rapidly wrote a screenplay. Because Ford couldn't read French, Polanski acted out the entire 90-minute script for him. Ford recalled that Polanski played everything but the weather. It was clear that this was deeply emotional for Roman. Ford took emotional risks here that he rarely attempted. He plays an ordinary man completely out of his depth. No whip, no blaster, no wisecracking heroics. Ford later reflected that the frustration and anxiety he had to create had a serious residual effect on him. When Warner Brothers pressured Polanski to reshoot the bittersweet ending, Ford reportedly insisted they not change a thing. Emmanuelle Seigner was 21. This was their first cinematic collaboration. She has said she didn't even know who Harrison Ford was at the time. Ford was reportedly very protective of her on set. Polanski and Seigner married in August 1989. For the rooftop scene where Ford's character nearly falls, Polanski and Ford actually climbed onto the real roof to work out shots. During the climactic sequence, Betty Buckley had difficulty showing sufficient distress, so Polanski secretly instructed makeup artists to create extremely gory prosthetic wounds. Buckley recalled that it was so ugly she wanted to vomit, but Roman got exactly what he wanted. Roger Ebert gave 3 out of 4 stars. The film was more successful internationally, particularly in France, where it drew over 1 million admissions. Amazon reviewers rate it 4.4 out of 5 today. Modern retrospectives position Ford's performance as exquisitely frayed. These 7 films collectively grossed approximately $49 million domestically. Less than Good Morning, Vietnam earned that month alone. Yet their combined casts went on to accumulate billions in box office revenue, multiple Oscars, and decades of cultural influence. Julia Roberts was 5th billed in a beach movie nobody saw. Pierce Brosnan was 7 years away from becoming Bond. River Phoenix was months away from an Oscar nomination. Matthew Perry and Johnny Galecki would anchor 2 of the most successful sitcoms in television history. February 1988 was a graveyard for these 7 films, but it was a launchpad for the people who made them. The studios knew exactly what they were doing when they buried these releases. What they couldn't know was who would climb out.